Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 11 NFL Power Rankings. We'll start off by briefly recapping my rankings from last week and what those teams did in Week 10. Last week at number 10, I had the Broncos. They beat the Raiders 10-7. Ninth was the Patriots. They beat the Buccaneers 28-23. Eighth, I had the Lions. They dominated the Commanders 44-22. Seventh was the Eagles. They beat the Packers 10-7. Sixth, I had the Colts. They beat the Falcons 31-25. Fifth, I had the Chiefs. They were on a bye. Number 4 was the Bills. They got destroyed by the Dolphins, losing 30-13. Third, I had the Buccaneers. They lost to the Patriots 28-23. Number 2 was the Rams. They easily beat the 49ers 42-26. And 1, I had the Seahawks, and they dominated the Cardinals 44-22. But getting into this week's rankings, being things at number 10, I've got the Bills. The Bills, they dropped number 10 after they lost to the Dolphins by a score of 30-13. And it's a really weird loss for the Bills, because they just beat the Chiefs last week. It seemed like they might be really good. But then this week they came out and was one of the worst teams in the NFL, and it wasn't even close. But this is a really bad performance for the Bills. The offense was not good as they scored a season low 13 points, and they also turned the ball over 3 times. Now, Josh Allen wasn't terrible, as he threw for 306 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, but he didn't get much help from the rest of the offense. As the Bills' top receiver had just 58 yards, and the run game was not good as they were held to just 87 rushing yards. And then defensively for the Bills, they were not good. They allowed 30 points. Their inability to stop the run appeared once again, as they allowed nearly 200 rushing yards. And overall, this was a bad game for the Bills. Now, they are still 6-3, which is why I still have them at number 10. But after a bad loss like this, if you want to drop them entirely out of the top 10, I'm fine with that. And if you want to put somebody like the Bears or Chargers here, I can definitely understand that. But I've got the Bills at number 10. Ninth, I have the Broncos. The Broncos, they move up spot to number 9 after they beat the Raiders by a score of 10-7. And the Broncos, they did get the win, but this is a terrible performance, especially offensively. As the offense scored a season low just 10 points, and they did it against a bad Raiders defense. But Bo Nix, he did not have a good game, throwing for 150 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions, and the run game wasn't great for the Broncos, which is 84 yards on 3.1 yards per attempt. But this is a bad performance for the Broncos offense, and I'm starting to get a little bit worried about them because they've now been held to 20 points or fewer in 5 of their 10 games. But while the offense struggled for the Broncos, their defense was great as usual, as they allowed just 7 points, 188 total yards, and they also got 6 sacks. But the Broncos, they got the win despite not playing that well. I don't know how sustainable that is because they have not looked great over the past few weeks, but they continue to win games. They're now 8-2, and I've got the Broncos at number 9. Eighth, I have the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, they fought number 8 after they lost to the Patriots 28-23. And the Buccaneers, they've definitely cooled off after their hot start because they've now lost 2 of their last 3 games. And this wasn't a terrible showing for the Buccaneers, but they definitely didn't play their best game. And they were always trying to come back in the second half. But Baker Mayfield showed a pretty solid game, throwing for 273 yards and 3 touchdowns. And rookie receiver Emeka Mbuka was great once again, as he caught 6 passes for 115 yards and a score. And the Buccaneers, they ran the football pretty effectively, averaging 5.4 yards per carry, although they were forced to abandon the run in the second half because they were always trying to come back. And then the defense for the Buccaneers, they weren't great, as they allowed 28 points and over 400 yards of offense. But this definitely wasn't their best game for the Buccaneers, and they've now lost 2 of their last 3 games. I still do think they are a pretty good team, but I've got the Buccaneers falling to number 8. Seventh, I've got the Eagles. So the Eagles check in at number 7 after they beat the Packers by a score of 10-7. And I know a lot of people are going to think this is way too low for the Eagles, and they should at the very least be top 5. Most people should probably have them top 3. But I'm keeping the Eagles here at number 7. Because they're just such a not good team, if that makes any sense. Well, I came into the week thinking I was probably going to move the Eagles up if they went into Lambeau and beat the Packers, but with how bad they look doing it, I'm keeping them at number 7. But the offense for the Eagles was not good. They scored just 10 points, and they were not good through the air or on the ground. As Jalen Hurts had 183 yards passing, and the Eagles ran for just 3.3 yards per carry. Now, the defense was great, holding the Packers to just 7 points and forcing 2 turnovers. And I mean, it's another win for the Eagles, but they were not convincing doing it, so I've got them at number 7, but I can definitely understand having them higher. 6, I've got the Lions. The Lions move up to number 6 after they dominated the Commanders 44-22. And this is a good bounce back win for the Lions after they lost to the Vikings last week. But the offense for the Lions was great, putting up 44 points, and they switched play callers for this game, as Dan Campbell called plays instead of offensive coordinator John Morton, although it clearly didn't matter, as the offense had one of their best games this season. But Jared Goff was great, throwing for 320 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Jameson Williams had a big game, with 6 catches for 119 yards and a score. And the run game was also great for the Lions, as they ran for 226 yards and 2 touchdowns on 6.8 yards per carry. And they were also led by Jahmyr Gibbs, who ran for 142 yards, and he had 3 total touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 receiving. And then the defense for the Lions, they played pretty well. They did allow 22 points, but a good chunk of them came in garbage time because the Lions, they got up so quickly. But this is a good win for the Lions. They got back on track. They're back in first place in the NFC North, and I've got the Lions at number 6. Number 5, I have the Chiefs. The Chiefs, they've remained at number 5. They're currently 5-4. They're on a bye this week. Next week, they had a huge game as they play the Broncos in Denver. 4th, I have the Colts. The Colts are back inside the top 5 after they beat the Falcons by a score of 31-25 in Germany. And this is a pretty good performance for the Colts, although it looked like they might lose because the Falcons, they scored a touchdown to take the lead with 1:44 left, but then the Colts, they went down and kicked the game-tying field goal to send the game to overtime. And obviously they won it in overtime. But the offense of the Colts, they had a good bounce-back game, and Daniel Jones played a lot better, although he still wasn't great, as he threw for 255 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, but it's definitely an improvement after he turned it over 5 times a week ago against the Steelers. Although the offensive line for the Colts struggled to protect Daniel Jones once again, as they allowed 7 sacks, and the Colts offensive line has now allowed 15 sacks in their last 3 games combined. That is definitely a little concerning. But the run game for the Colts was insane. Jonathan Taylor had another ridiculous game, as he ran for 244 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the Colts as a team ran for over 300 yards. And then defensively for the Colts, they didn't have their best game, as they allowed 25 points, but they got a big stop in overtime, and overall the defense was decent. But this was a good bounce-back win for the Colts, and after the win over the Falcons, I've got them at number 4. Third, I have the Patriots. The Patriots, they jump up to number 3 after they knocked off the Buccaneers 28-23. And this was a good showing for the Patriots. They were pretty much in control of this game the entire way, especially in the second half. And this is also a good win for them because they had played a pretty soft schedule to this point, but they have now showed they can go to Tampa and beat a good Buccaneers team. So that's a big win for the Patriots. But the offense for the Patriots, they played well, and Drake May had another great game, as he threw for 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And Travion Henderson also played really well, as he ran for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns on just 14 carries. And it's really a crazy idea for the Patriots that when you involve one of your most talented offensive weapons, it adds a whole other element to their offense. So I really hope the Patriots continue to use Travion Henderson. And then defensively for the Patriots, they also played well, as they allowed 23 points, and they were really good in the fourth quarter, outside of allowing a garbage time touchdown. But this was another good win for the Patriots. They're now 8-2, winners of 7 games in a row, and I've got the Patriots at number 3. Second, I've got the Rams. The Rams, they've remained at number 2 after they had another great game, and they beat the 49ers by a score of 42-26. And the Rams, they really dominated this game. They scored touchdowns in each of their first 3 drives, putting up 21-0, and they were in control of this game the entire way, because the closest this game ever got was 28-20, but the Rams, they answered with a touchdown on their very next drive. But the offense for the Rams, they were great, as they put up 42 points against a good 49er defense, and Matthew Stafford continued his MVP case, as he threw for 280 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Stafford also became the 9th player in NFL history with 400 touchdowns in his career. And the Rams, they also ran the football effectively, rushing for 126 yards, and Kyren Williams found the end zone twice. And then the defense for the Rams, they did allow 26 points, but overall they played pretty well. But this is a good win for the Rams, as they destroyed a pretty good 49ers team, and if you want to have them at number 1, I can definitely understand that, and I thought about doing it, but I've got the Rams at number 2. And coming in at number 1, I've got the Seahawks. So the Seahawks, they've remained here at number 1, and I probably would have switched the Rams and the Seahawks if the Seahawks played a close game, but they also dominated as they crushed the Cardinals 44-22. And the Seahawks, they took control of this game very quickly. They scored 21 points in the first quarter, and they were up 38-7 by the half. But the offense for the Seahawks, they were great. Sam Darnold threw just 12 passes all game, and he completed 10 of them for 178 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. And the run game was also great, as they ran for 198 yards and 2 scores. But while the offense was great for the Seahawks, the defense might have been even better, because they allowed 22 points, they got 5 sacks, and the defense also scored 2 touchdowns. Both of them were fumble returns for DeMarcus Lawrence. But this was an all-around great performance for the Seahawks as they dominated the Cardinals, and they've remained at number 1 in my power rankings. Well, those are my Week 11 NFL power rankings. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn on notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.